Are you in the danger zone? Or more importantly, is your favorite NBA draft prospect in the danger zone? We've created 6 danger zones for NBA prospects. You decide whether it means you wouldn't draft them. Next on Locked on Jazz. Bum 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 bum.
You are Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.
How are you? I am David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. And today's Locked on Jazz, we're going to look at our statistical models. We have found 6 danger zones. Some seem scarier than others. If you might draft a prospect, and we'll look at which prospects in this NBA draft are in those danger zones. And then you can decide what you think. We'll talk a little bit about the NBA Finals last night. Boy, the playoffs have become a dud here late after a great start. And we'll talk about all that coming up on today's edition of Locked on Jazz. I am David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. And this is Locked on Jazz. It's your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thank you so much for making Locked on Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcasting apps. We also are free on YouTube. So subscribe so you can listen while you're in your car or on your phone or running or doing something like that on your podcasting app, and then subscribe and follow on YouTube so you can watch the show if you want to, and hit the bell button on that so it notifies you whenever we're live. Thanks very much for being your first listen, and thanks to all the everydayers. Few notes from yesterday's show. Thank you to all the people who sent me nice notes. I very much appreciate that. We have a great community. It's neat to be a part of. I'm glad I feel comfortable sharing with you. Second, I screwed up a bunch yesterday. We have the 29th and the 32nd pick, not the 28th and 32nd pick. I don't know why I keep having this in my head. I've said that 1,000 times, though. I almost think I decided it before the season ended. I have no excuse that's any good, but it's just kind of, so I apologize. And I actually went back and listened to the show, and I was like, hey, wait, Denver has the 28th, and Oklahoma City won that last game, so we slipped to 20. Yeah, oops. So when Oklahoma City got the 1 seed, we slipped, thinking when Denver, we thought had the 1 seed secured, so I think that's where I screwed that up. So we have 29-32. The other one, which actually YouTube chat told me, I'm not going to even lie, I had a feeling, but I searched everywhere the night before and couldn't find it. Not that well, probably. And I was somewhat of a zombie the night before. Is the Salas kid who's Ron Boone's cousin went back to college, which is a bummer because I really liked his numbers and thought he looked really good. So, all right, that's it. All right, here's what we've done today. For those who are new to the number system we use for the draft, we've kind of heard it a lot, but let's just make sure. So I characterize, really, I said 6, but it's really 4. So we have athleticism, which over the last 5 years of the draft, we've looked at as either being what your percentile is in transition and what your percentile is in isolation. So that tells me if you're just a bona fide athlete. Number 2 is playmaking. And I just use pick and roll on that. Whether you can make a play on the pick and roll. Then there's shooting, and we look at your shooting percentile on spot up and catch and shoot. And then we have creating, which is creating off the bounce. So I've kind of created 6, but really 4 danger zones off of the last 3 drafts. I'll go back and do more where I kind of share these things progressively with you. It's not like a college thesis where it has to be perfect. So there's some flaws here probably, but I'll just share with you what I have and you can listen and decide. That's always what I've believed. I've always believed you're smart enough to figure out whether you believe what I'm telling you or not, and you won't just aimlessly follow me. I'm not a political pundit that you just aimlessly follow. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So the first danger zone is for athleticism, and it's anyone who's under 40% in transition percentile. So in the last 3 years, this has been Peyton Watson, which is interesting, because he obviously has turned out to be a pretty decent athlete, but he was not that first year. This is so funny. I write these things so fast when I do them, and I somewhat scribble them, and now I get to them, and I can't remember who these players' names are. And the reason I can't remember these players' names are is because they haven't all panned out, and so therefore then they're not natural names to remember, which is kind of funny. So give me 1 second here while I pull this back up to make sure I see who I'm talking about. So players that are in the athleticism danger zone from last year or 2 years ago's draft. So I did 2 years ago. I'm kind of doing this in a weird order. I probably should, now I think about it, to make it so that you can follow it better. Let's do it this way. From 3 years ago, the players that were in the danger zone 3 years ago: Josh Giddey, Keon Johnson, Usam Garuba, Josh Primo, and Moses Moody. Okay, like, seems to match. Last year, or in 2002, those players that were in the danger zone for transition, and so this is athleticism, and we have two monikers for athleticism. We have both this and Peyton Watson. The name I couldn't remember was Kennedy Chandler. Was drafted 38th. He actually wasn't in the first round. Ty Washington, Dyson Daniels, Max Christie, and actually Andrew Nebhard of Gonzaga was in the transition, but not in the isolation. And then last year, the players are drafted, and we don't really know on these yet, but this gets super interesting on one of them, where Keontae George, he was the worst transition percentile of anyone last year. Remember, he was heavy in college. Jalen Hood-Schifino, Nick Smith, Scoot Henderson, and Jaime Jaquez. So Jaime Jaquez busted it, but Scoot Henderson being in there is really interesting. So there's been 5 guys in each of the first rounds that are sub 40 percentile in transition on Synergy. And I would say of those, Josh Giddey survived, but he survived because of lack of athleticism. Moses Moody's been okay. And we'll see on Keontae George, Scoot Henderson, and we'll see how long Jaime Jaquez lasts. So it's too early. It would be nice if I had all the data for 2020. I don't have all of the data yet on 2020. I have a lot of it. I just had some gaps, so I wanted to use it, but just if a quick scan to give you an idea, and then you can decide which of these you think. The guys who were in the danger zone, one of them is really surprising. In 2020 were Patrick Williams, Cole Anthony, Cassius Winston, who went 45th, Jaden McDaniel. Jaden McDaniel's surprising right there. Okay, the next one in the danger zone on athleticism is isolation. So 3 years ago was Josh Primo, Jaden Springer, Scotty Barnes, and Jalen Johnson. 2 guys turned out okay. So, let's keep an eye on whether you buy this or not. So maybe you think the transition was pretty good there, I would say. In isolation, Jalen Williams, the Arkansas Jalen Williams, who wasn't a first-round pick, Patrick Baldwin, Benedict Mathurin, Dyson Daniels, Ochai Agbaji. And last year was Anthony Black and Scoot Henderson. And a not entirely complete, but pretty good list for the 2020 draft. Interestingly, Tyrese Maxey, Jaden McDaniels again were there. So actually, it's sub 20. So actually, nobody. I take it back. No, actually, it's sub 20%. And so nobody. Both Maxey and that draft was really athletic. Everyone's sub plus 40%. And let me double check that on isolation on the Primo Springer Scotty Barnes number, because I wonder if that one is only a sub 20 percentile. In other words, most people aren't very good in transition, and so the number in isolation, so the number is not as good. Scotty Barnes was 18. Okay, great. And Jalen Johnson was 19. So who in this year's draft would we put in the danger zone for athleticism? I've done through the top 45 picks of the draft. And so let's take a look and see who we put. And then you can decide, right? You just heard, I think it's a danger zone. I think that's the right way to say it. Like most of those players didn't pan out. So that to me would be a little bit of a danger zone. If I had one of my players in that level, I wanted to draft him, it would give me pause. They are Bub Carrington, Justin Edwards, the rookie out of Kentucky, would be thought of for the Jazz at 28 or 32, the freshman. Jacoby Walter, Rob Dillingham. This is in transition. Harrison Ingram, who I watched last night and really liked. The big Oshu I do not know how to pronounce this. Do not know this player. Out of Marquette. And then right on the edge of it is Bazulius out of the G League Ignite. Right on the edge of it. But he is in it for isolation percentile. So this is a top 10 pick everyone's talking about, who is in the danger zone for athleticism. And when I watched him, like I said, someone's got to help me explain this. I don't see it. I can't see him beating anyone. Isolation percentage, there's only two guys that are in it. And one of them's out of G League Ignite. He's 6'10". He wouldn't be an isolation player. And the other's Trevin Brazil out of Arkansas. And somebody told me something about him. I don't know what it was. And then Bazulius is the only one. Dalton Connect is the fourth worst isolation player in this draft, but he's in the 44th percentile, then followed by Ron Holland and Isaiah Collier. And I got to be honest, I watched Dalton Connect last night, and I'm not talking about today because I had such a rough watch that I have to watch it again. All right, so really of important players for what we care about, Bazulius is the name that jumps out the biggest here. But then a guy I really like in Bub Carrington, the youngster Justin Edwards, and Jacoby Walter and Rob Dillingham. So some guys that float around our range. By the way, we have the results in for our first finalists in our bracket of 8. We'll give that to you next. Plus, we'll look at those players that are in the pick and roll danger zone before we look at the shooting danger zone next on Locked On Jazz. Today's show is brought to you by my good friend Steve Carter over at Intercap Lending. There's really nothing that I could tell you more about Steve Carter in Intercap than just simply the best customer service you could possibly imagine. In fact, multiple Locked On people have used Steve Carter. There's really nothing that makes me more comfortable than sending you over to Intercap Lending and Steve Carter, whether it was Reese Lindsay. Steve made the purchase of my home so easy and stress-free. I've kept in the loop, and Steve was available whenever there was a question or concern. I've used Steve again in the future and recommend Steve to friends and families. I used Steve again recently this month with another home, and Steve made the process easy and stress-free. Jeremy says we worked with Steve for many years, have not only completed a couple of refinances, but most recently helped us with an out-of-state purchase. Steve is very reasonable, communicative, quick, and professional. He is our go-to and always will be. Just wrapped up a mortgage with Intercap, and Steve Carter, says Matthew. It's Steve Carter. He's over at Intercap Lending. You can call him directly at 385-885-28. Intercap Lending, NMLS 1178-6666. If you want to, just email me at dlock09@gmail.com. That's dlock09@gmail.com, and I will get you the VIP meeting with Steve Carter that you deserve. Today's show is also brought to you by Game Time. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA and get $20 off your first purchase with Game Time. Who was I listening to the other day? Oh, Drake Toll of Big 12 hit a concert in Virginia the other day when he was with Savannah Bananas. He's the voice of Savannah Bananas. He's also our Big 12 host. And he was out on the road and used Game Time. All of our hosts love Game Time. Why? Because lowest price guarantee, event cancellation, 24-hour guarantee, on-time ticket delivery. Up front, they show you all the costs. You just hit the little toggle. So it shows it to you, and you get zone deals, and you can pick the section, and the Game Time picks the seats for the biggest savings. Game Time is the official ticketing app for Locked On, and the reason is because you can get these great deals and get last-minute deals right up to the start of the event, even an hour after it starts. So go check it out at Game Time. Download the Game Time app right now and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for your first purchase. Terms do apply. Thanks so much for listening to Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. I'm David Locke. Locked On has launched the first ever 24/7 national streaming sports channel. Get the local experts of Locked On giving you all the biggest stories of the day. The Celtics and Mavericks analysis will be on there tonight. It's on YouTube at Locked On Sports Today. It's also available on Amazon Fire TV. All right, danger zone for pick and roll ball handlers. Now, this is interesting because you're not asking every player to be a pick and roll ball handler. But it was interesting when I went through this that like, oh, wait, if you can't handle it all, it may limit what you're able to do. So here's the danger zone. And there's a lot of players in the last few years. I have this actually, if you're under 50 percentile, I might have this a little wide ranging, but here are the players. So 3 years ago, the players were drafted in the first round that were under 50% pick and roll. Josh Primo, Jared Springer, Sama Garuba, Keon Johnson, Zaire Williams, James Bouknight. That's 0 for 6. The next year, Marshawn Beauchamp, Dalen Terry, Peyton Watson, Max Christie, Jake LaRavia. Jeremy Sohan is near the thing, Blake Wesley and Ty Washington. I'm not sure that there shouldn't be a break around 30. But, okay, frankly, that we are now, that's 8, 6, 5, 8, 6. If Sohan's made it, which I think is debatable, we're 1 of 14. Last year was Bilal Coulibaly, Brandon Miller, interesting, Cam Whitmore, Nick Smith, and Bryce Sensabaugh was right on that edge. I'm not sure yet where I think that. I have it really high at 50 right now. I think that's too much, if I'm being honest. I think it probably should be breaking at about 30, which would take Jeremy Sohan, Blake Wesley, Ty Washington off. It would take Nick Smith and Bryce Sensabaugh. 2021, adding one more draft class, or 2020, excuse me, adding one more draft class to this. And again, the only reason I don't have 2020 like right off the top of my head is I'm missing 1 or 2 players, so it's not complete. But the players coming out on this were Aaron Nesmith, Josh Green, Elijah Hughes, who didn't get drafted. Tyrese Halliburton was at 31%. Jameis Ramsey at 33. Cole Anthony at 38. I could pick my numbers and drop Tyrese Halliburton. That's obviously a big miss if I set it at 30. But, okay, Halliburton may have overcome because he was in the 99th percentile spot-up shooting too. All right, who are in the danger zone for this year for pick and roll? And we'll give you the 2 different versions of that, right? Because I think it's still, this is where some of this data is still developing. And I do think this one's interesting. Like if I was an NBA scout, I think I would be paying attention. Okay. Rosh Hashir's in the 8th percentile. He's only ran 28 of them, but he's in the 8th percentile. Kevin McClure, who's bouncing around late first round, is in the 9th percentile. Matisse Bezulius is in the 17th percentile again. Keshawn George is in the 27th percentile, so I definitely insist that the Jazz cannot draft him. Justin Edwards is in the 36th percentile. Jacoby Walter is in the 43rd. And then right on the edge is our guy, Cody Williams. Everybody else is over 50%. I have not flipped this. I will tonight, of whether there's a success rate number that if somebody's in the 99th percentile, like Baylor Shireman of Creighton on pick and roll, that you should just draft him. Terrence Shann Jr., who, yes, I mentioned yesterday, and I didn't mention the rape charges against him just because I was looking at numbers, but that would be a different question we drafted. Jared McCain and Reed Shepard are in the 93rd percentile. We'll look at that tomorrow. Is there a golden zone? If there's a danger zone today, is there a golden zone for tomorrow? But those are, so this is where this draft is getting super interesting. And it's where being 10th might just be fine. Because we now suddenly have Bezulius and Rosh Hashay who are suddenly into this danger zone, along with a few others. And the danger zone on pick and roll, we'll see. Bilal Coulibaly was really good last year, but he was not like a pick and roll player. Brandon Miller was really good. He could just really shoot it. We'll see on Cam Whitmore and Nick Smith. And we'll see on Bryce Sensabaugh. So I find that one really, really interesting. We had our first semifinal match yesterday, and it was a blowout. Cody Williams against Rob Dillingham, and Cody Williams on the YouTube vote took 82%. 82%. Somebody wrote on my notes that they think that Rob Dillingham's De'Aaron Fox. I think De'Aaron Fox is way bigger. Sometimes I watched Dillingham. I thought he was, by the way, he's pretty good. Like, I watched the Kentucky-Tennessee game, and I watched the Tennessee-North Carolina game. This is where I said I had some rough Dalton Connect watches. But De'Aaron Fox is 6'3", 185. Rob Dillingham, I think, is 6 feet, 170. I don't know what he came in on measurements, but he is small. I will say this. Reed Shepard, who I am enamored with did look small compared to Dalton Connect, like when they were playing together. Dillingham measured at 6'1" with a 6'3" wingspan and weighed 164. Wow. I think he's going to slip. I think it's too small. There's just some level where that gets too hard for everyone to take in. Okay, let's go back to the danger zone. There's 3 of them here. They're very similar. Spot up shooting. Okay. Spot up shooting, which might be really important. Okay. 3 years ago, James Bouknight, Zaire Williams, a first-round picks, JT Thor, Keon Johnson, 0 for 4. Ayo DeSumo was a second-round draft pick, was in this list. Just wanted full disclosure. 2 years ago's draft, Peyton Watson, Walker Kessler, no kidding. Zhang at Oklahoma City, Marshawn Beauchamp, Jalen Williams, the center, second-round draft pick, and Dyson Daniels. Jalen Williams, we'll see. He didn't shoot very well this year, otherwise perfect. Last year's draft, this one's funny. Derek Lively, Jalen Hood-Schifino, Jaime Jaquez, Anthony Black, Victor Wembanyama. I think you can get over it. 2019 draft, players that struggled, that were in the danger zone in spot-up shooting, which are going to be the ones that are very similar to the spot-up shooting, to the catch and shoot. So I'll give that to you in a second. Precious Achiuwa, Zeke Naji, Isaiah Stewart, all bigs. Patrick Williams, Zaire Tillman, and that's it. That draft really had everyone could play. That's the Desmond Bain, Jaden McDaniels. So that was it, all of them. And frankly, a lot of those guys are struggling to make it in the league. Okay, now let's go to catch and shoot, because I don't want to do these separately because I think they're very similar, because really one's spot up shooting, one's catch and shoot. Danger zone players are similar. Danger zone players from 4 years ago's draft on catch and shoot are Zaire Tillman, Isaac Okoro, Tyrese Maxey. We've all talked about, I missed on Tyrese Maxey. Onyeka Okongwu, big guy. Isaiah Stewart and Precious Achiuwa. And that's it. Okay. So we go to the James Bouknight, JT Thor, Zaire Williams, Josh Giddey, Sean Garuba, and right on the edge, Jalen Suggs. Still can't really shoot. 2 years ago, Walker Kessler, Peyton Watson, Zhang again, Jalen Williams again, Patrick Baldwin, Marshawn Beauchamp, Dyson Daniels. And last year, Derek Lively, Jalen Hood-Schifino, Amon Thompson, Scoot Henderson, Anthony Black. I mean, I'm not saying it's a guarantee, but of all the names I just mentioned, Peyton Watson's been fine, but he hasn't, I'm not sure. Bouknight, Williams, DeSumo, JT Thor, Keon Johnson, Bouknight, Thor, Zaire Williams, Josh Giddey still can't shoot. Suma, they all, yeah, I'm buying this one. So who are the danger zone spot up shooters on this year's draft, and who are the danger zone catch and shoot guys on this year's draft? Because I'm buying this one. I think I advise you stay away. That's next on Locked On Jazz. Today's edition of Locked On Jazz is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the #1 fantasy sports app with more than 5 million users. It's a more fun and exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite teams. You pick more or less on 2 or more players. Shoot to win up to 100% times your cash. So in other words, you can turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite sports this summer. You can make a Prize Picks lineup of 2 to 6 players in less than 60 seconds, and you just need to pick them more or less and pick it correctly. Pretty great. So jump aboard and see what you can do. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA and get your first deposit match up to $100. That's download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for your first deposit match. Pick more, pick less. It's just that easy. Thanks so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. Are you ready? Here are the players in this year's NBA draft that are in the danger zone. By the way, Locked On Mavericks, Locked On Celtics, both live in Dallas last night, so grab those afterwards. Okay. The first two are second-round pick big guys, so we'll just ignore that. Stephen Castle, 28% on spot up. Bazulius, 28%. Saloon, 29%. These are all top 10 picks. Ron Holland, 30th percentile. My guy, Bub Carrington, 31 percentile. And Ryan Dunn, 32nd percentile. Castle, Bazulius, Saloon, Holland, Carrington, and Dunn, all in the danger zone of spot-up shooting. Again, the guys that have been in the zone for the last 3 years, Peyton Watson, Jang, Beauchamp, Dyson Daniels, James Bouknight, Zaire Williams, JT Thor, Keon Johnson, Jalen Hood-Schifino, Jaime Jaquez, Anthony Black, and Victor Wembanyama. Victor's pretty special. Does it give you pause? Would it change? I want your comments. Throw them to me at X or throw them to me on the comments. Would this change whether you would draft any of those guys? Okay, catch and shoot danger zone. It's going to be similar, but there's usually one or two different players in there. Ryan Dunn, Ron Holland, Stephen Cancel, Matisse Bazulius, Nikola Topic sneaks in right at the line, as does Alex Sarr, the number 1 or 2 pick of the draft. Okay, again, Dunn, Holland, Castle, Bazulius, Topic. And Topic is our contest tonight. The guys who have been in the danger zone and catch and shoot over the last 3 years. Peyton Watson, Jang, Baldwin, Beauchamp, Daniels. Like, none of these guys can shoot. Bouknight, Thor, Zaire Williams, Josh Giddey, Garuba, Jalen Suggs was right on the edge. Jalen Hood-Schifino, Amon Thompson, Scoot Henderson, Anthony Black. Like, do you need me? Like, we can go run through all these guys, see what they're shooting in the NBA. That's a pretty incredible group, right? Peyton Watson might be the best shooter of the group. And he shot 29.6% last year from 3. I know scouts who have Stephen Castle number 1 on their board. Jang has shot 28% in his career as a 3-point shooter. The one guy you might find who's on this list who's turned out to be better is the center for Oklahoma City, Jalen Williams out of Arkansas. He has shot 38% from 3 in 2 years. He shot 37% this year. He got hot at the end of the year to bring it back around. Okay, so he might be he's the outlier. Patrick Baldwin Jr., everyone wondered about him. He has shot 32% from 3 last year. Marshawn Beauchamp hasn't been able to shoot. Dyson Daniels in 2 years in the league is shooting 31% from 3. Should I keep going? James Bouknight in 3 years in the NBA is shooting 33% from 3. Zaire Williams in 3 years in the NBA with the Memphis Grizzlies and starting a lot of it is shooting 30% from the NBA from 3. Josh Giddey, who gets left open every single time, is shooting 31% from 3. I believe we're beginning to have a fairly compelling case here. Garuba, not a good shooter. Jalen Suggs, right on the edge of this. Right on the edge. Career 33% from 3. Scoot Henderson, Amon Thompson, Anthony Black. We'll see. Scoot Henderson numbers were terrible. 32.5% from 3. So would this make you stay away from Ryan Dunn, Ron Holland, Stephen Castle, Bazulius, Topic, Alex Sarr? Maybe. Alex Sarr's on a limited amount of attempts, I think. 52. No less than Topic. Okay, let's get to the last one. The danger zone of off the bounce threes. or off the bounce shooting. This is one that's interesting because I've always thought this was like just intuitively the most important skill. But I actually have a lot of cases of players who do this well. We'll do it again. We'll do this again tomorrow the other way. Who their off the bounce game's really good and it didn't translate. At least that's my memory. But we're going to find this. All right. Who are guys that are in the off the bounce danger zone? From the draft 4 years ago or 3 years ago, Josh Green, Precious Achiuwa, a guy by the name of Grant Riller who never made it. Jameis Ramsey, who didn't make it. My good friend Tyrese Halliburton, who screws up all of my numbers. It's right there. Halliburton was like 95% on catch and shoot. Not very good on everything else. Okay, so Halliburton's the outlier here. 2021, Scotty Barnes, Jared Springer, Keon Johnson. 2 years ago, Jeremy Sohan, Dyson Daniels, Jake LaRavia, Ochai Agbaji. Johnny Davis is in here. And there's one other, and give me 1 second. The scribble is causing me problems. And then I'll see it. I'll know exactly who it was. Max Christie. Last year, Koulibaly, Jarice Walker, Victor Wembanyama, Scoot Henderson. Last year's draft didn't have a lot of this. So Sohan, Daniels, LaRavia, Agbaji, Max Christie, Johnny Davis. Might be 6 for 6 on misses. Scotty Barnes made it. Jared Springer, Keon Johnson, no. And we'll see on Koulibaly, Walker, Victor. And then in 2020, Josh Green's made it, but not on off the bounce player. Tyrese Halliburton has certainly made it. This year, Saloon, Ron Holland, Kevin McClure, Johnny Furpy. I keep calling him by the wrong name. Stephen Castle, Mateusz Bazulius, Cody Williams. It's a lot. Jacoby Walter. And then Dalton Connect is right on the edge. Off the bounce dribble guys. Saloon, Holland, McClure, Furpy, Castle, Bazulius, Cody Williams. He's 5 of 16. He didn't take very many. Jacoby Walter, Dalton Connect. Right on the edge. Rosh Hashir's at 42 percentile, right on the edge also. Not a lot of guys left. Go get me Reed Shepherd and let me go home. That is Locked on Jazz today. Hope you have a great one. We'll talk about the Celtics and the all-time great. And by the way, does Milwaukee get a banner for this? Because the Dame Lillard give up Drew Holiday and let him go to your rival trade. Wow. That is Locked on Jazz. Thanks so much for taking the time with us. I want to hear your thoughts and your comments. Throw it around. If someone wants to open a Reddit thread on it, I'd love to chime in and see what people think of the danger zones for NBA draft prospects. Have a great day. Thanks so much. We now send you the first ever 24/7 national streaming channel, Locked on Sports, Locked on Sports Today. If you're on audio, check out Locked on Sports Today on YouTube or on Amazon Fire TV.